Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers DFS Podcast with your hosts, Kyle Borgononi and Matthew Betts.
Hey there, DFSers. I am what you would call amped this week. I'm here with my boy Betts, who's got a fresh cut in front of me. Betts, how you doing this week?
Oh my gosh, Kyle. So good. I'm excited to talk football with you tonight. Like you said, fresh haircut, so that always means good things going into the weekend. Really excited for this slate. We were talking before we hopped on the mic about, listeners and people reading the DFS Pass and those sort of things that do their homework are going to smash this week because it is not an easy slate. There's a lot of top values or names that we like to play that aren't on the slate. So you're going to have to do your homework and come out and win this week. But I think this is a good spot for our listeners to do that.
Yeah, if you listen to this podcast, if you part of what we get to do each week with the DFS Pass, you're going to set yourself up to win some money.
Straight cash, homie.
Straight cash, homie, is what I'm talking about because this past week, we had some listeners and we had you Betts come up as big winners carrying home that cash. So tell us about your big wins this past week.
It was a fun week, and I'll be honest, it was surprising because typically I don't excel a lot at the showdown slate. I had a pretty decent week in terms of the main slate and that kind of thing, but yeah, Monday night was fantastic. Took down a pretty big GPP. Thank you to my boy Mike Williams, who I will forever love, and I will never quit him. Came out and had a smash week, but really, being able to write up the Thursday Night Football preview article every single week for the DFS Pass, I feel like has made me a better showdown player because I'm going through the process, I'm studying and kind of learning the strategy more and more each week, and it was fun to see it pay off. So yeah, it was great. And then, besides that, just so good to see our listeners winning and winning big. So that's better than any win that we ever have, is just being able to give advice and have people come out and win on their own. So that was just so fun to see. So it was a great week. We got to keep it going though here in week 6.
Yeah, we had a listener reach out to us who placed 7th in the Millie Maker. So he came home with $15,000. And this is what he said. He said, I listened to the podcast. So what you're doing right now, if what you're doing is you're listening to our sweet sounds of our voices, you also could get in 7th place. But he said he listened to the podcast and what we recommended and got 7th place. But then we also got a lot of people that read some of the dart throws that I threw out this past week. And I feel super happy that Chase Claypool was one of those names listed, and he went bananas this past week. The crazy thing is that I was at the beach, and so I didn't have much time to build GPP lineups. I did okay in cash, but I had so many people say, I played Chase Claypool, and I was like, I didn't, but I recommended it, and you took my advice. So yeah, that's just awesome. Awesome that we get to help people learn how to play the game and learn how to play long-term. We're in week 6, and we feel like so far this method has been successful. So yeah, just any other takeaways from this past week, just in terms of mindset and strategy for you before we get into it?
Nothing major. I think looking back on this weekend, we talked about it 2 weeks ago on the show. I felt a lot better about my cash lineups because I kind of fallen into the trap of playing some more volatile wide receivers in cash. And going back to players that I feel like more reliable really worked really well for me this week. Guys like CeeDee Lamb, who are just seeing a massive target share. Guys like that, it was just easy to kind of project volume, and it worked for cash. So it was good to see that come to fruition. But yeah, man, I'm excited to break down this slate here. It's going to be a really, really intriguing one. And I'm excited for our listeners to not bring home 7th this week. I don't want 7th place. I want a listener to bring home the Millie Maker. Come on, let's do it, guys.
Yeah, we'll probably get a cut of that, right? Like I'm pretty sure that
at least 20%.
I'm figuring at least 20%. Maybe if first child is named after Borgen Betts.
I would feel so bad for whoever this kid that is.
They have to explain, well, my dad listened to this podcast this one time and he won some money, and so he was indebted to call his first child Betts.
I apologize in advance for nothing. Let's go.
So you can follow us on Twitter. It's at the FF Ballers. I'm at Kyle_Borg, and Betts is at the Fantasy PT. We'd love to talk with you guys. I know we were getting some DMs from different people just asking us about strategy. Someone specifically was asking me about showdown slates, and so it's great to point back to some of the episodes that we did in August to talk about strategy, talk about how to win consistently in DFS. And if you go online, our DFS Pass right now still is a great deal. We put in our heart and soul each week in that content, and we feel like it's actually paid off for a lot of people. So ultimatedfspass.com, that would be a place that you can go to and get some of our stuff. So let's get in the main slate.
State of the main slate.
Betts brought it up, but this is a super interesting week in terms of the main slate because there are some names that are not on here this week. If you were to get on DraftKings or FanDuel and check out the main slate, you would find there's some big names that aren't on there. So for instance, quarterbacks this week, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, they are not on the main slate. They're on Monday night. Russell Wilson's on bye, Dak's hurt. So those are like top 5 names that are just not on the slate. So it's basically Lamar Jackson is going to be at the top. Running backs, there's no Zeke, no CEH, Kamara's on bye, Jacobs is on bye, and likely Dalvin Cook and CMC are not going to be playing. Wide receivers, no Tyreek, no Diggs, no DeAndre Hopkins, the Cowboys wide receivers, the Seahawks wide receivers, and then the big one for me on tight end, there's no Kittle, there's no Kelsey, there's no Darren Waller who's on bye. So those are some big names that we've been talking about.
Like who actually can be put in our lineup this week?
It really is sad when we get to tight end. I wrote this down. I said, it's Mark Andrews and that's it. And you know what? there is Jonnu Smith. And I know you're crazy about Jonnu this week. So
I'm so in on Jonnu. I can't wait to break down that game. I'm very, very excited about Jonnu Smith this week.
You brought it up though. If you do your homework this week, meaning if you take a little bit of time, I've got my notebook right in front of me, this beautiful scratch notebook. Betts, you can see it.
I see the proof. It is there.
Where I just literally wrote down, okay, so here's the plays that I initially like, and I started building a cash lineup today, messing around with it. We usually message each other back and forth and say, what do you think about this? I would encourage you, get a friend and send them a picture of your cash lineup. Tell them to tear it apart if they need to. But all of our DraftKings and FanDuel picks are in the DFS Pass, so you can get those. Ben Cummins, Robert Wozniak that come out on Thursday. If you want just straight picks. But we're going to go through this first game. And man, I cannot believe we're talking about the Lions and the Jaguars this week. And I titled this, 2 defenses who would like you to hold their beer. Because the Lions and the Jaguars just cannot play defense. This game has a 54.5 point total. The Lions are 3.5 point road favorites. The line actually opened up at 53. So people have been betting it up. But what do you see in this game in terms of how do we want to attack it?
Yeah, I'm super excited about this game for a lot of reasons. The first one, I feel like through the course of August, people were talking about Matthew Stafford as a fantastic late round quarterback pick in redraft leagues and in best ball formats. It was like all about Matthew Stafford. And through 1 month of the season, everyone's like, Matthew Stafford's been all right. But we can't forget, there was no Kenny Golladay for multiple games coming off the hamstring strain. Now they're coming off of a bye week with extra time to prepare for arguably the league's worst defense, and they're banged up like crazy. They missed one of their best linebackers in Myles Jack last week. They missed CJ Henderson, their best corner last week. They missed a defensive lineman as well last week. So they're banged up on defense to make matters worse for Jacksonville. I think Matthew Stafford and stacking him with Kenny Golladay this week, I mean, I'm just so excited about that stack. And hey, I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention your boy, Marv, at least once on the show talking about this game. But I really want to build around Matthew Stafford if I'm stacking this game.
Yeah, Matthew Stafford is someone we're going to talk about this week. Next week, they play Atlanta. So the Lions are set up in an awesome way. He's 6,300 on DK. Jacksonville's dead last in pass DVOA. They're not getting after the quarterback, 31st in adjusted sack rate. I mean, they're just giving up points. They're second most in yards per play, third most in points per drive. I could just inundate you with stats about how bad the Jaguars have been, but yeah, you can stack him. I think Marvin Jones is someone that I want to go back to because no one does, especially in tournaments. But in cash lineups, I mean, it's got to be Kenny G.
So smooth. Oh my god.
Oh man, we just need to let this play.
Yeah, it's been a while since he's been out for a smash week in DFS, so we need him this week.
I needed to play that just to comfort my own soul. I traded away Kenny G this past week in a home league. He was one of my keepers, and I wanted to keep him just for the fact of that drop, but traded him for Miles Sanders, and looked pretty good this past week. Won me a week. But this is a game that you can stack, and the reason why we like it is because there are affordable options on both sides. I mean, really, the person you'd be paying up for the most is James Robinson, which on DK, he's still only 6,800. He's getting 19 opportunities per game. Detroit ranks 31st in DVOA versus the run. I'm open to going to him in cash. Last week, he let people down. Are you comfortable with him as a cash game play?
Oh, for sure. I mean, especially on a slate like this, you mentioned the names that aren't available to us at the running back position. And James Robinson is a guy who's just week after week after week getting a ton of volume. Every running back in the NFL is going to have a down week here or there, so we can't really hold it against him too much. And, our boy Ben Cummins in the preseason wrote up an article about defenses we want to attack every single week on the ground, and that's the Lions, man. They cannot stop the run. 31st in DVOA against the run. They are not good. So yes, give me James Robinson. I love that as a piece to kind of bring it back with on that side of the ball if you're building some Matthew Stafford and Kenny Galladay stacks. I also want to talk a little bit about Laviska Shenault. I feel like he is quietly flying under the radar as a guy who's been really productive. I mean, he might be popular. His price is really affordable, especially on FanDuel at 5,800. On DK is 5,200. But he's a guy who I think you can play in cash this week. I think he's viable. He's seeing volume. And I'm nervous about DJ Chark this week coming off the ankle injury. We'll see if he actually ends up playing. But in games where Gardner Minshew doesn't have DJ Chark this year, we've seen him actually not really be able to come out and produce and hit his ceiling. So I feel like that's a fade for me in this matchup. I'm going Matthew Stafford stacks and bringing it back with some combination of James Robinson and then potentially Laviska Shenault.
Well, yeah, what's the status on DJ Chark? I mean, everything I've seen, he didn't practice on Wednesday, so that's all we have right now. But my expectation is that he won't play this week. Have you heard anything else?
No, I'm with you on that. And, for our listeners, we record this on Wednesday night, so we don't have the Thursday or Friday practice reports. Definitely check out the Injury Blitz podcast, though, where I will be hosting that and talking more about injuries. But he does have an injury history going all the way back to college. And so that's relevant for his ankle. Missed last year a couple of games with the ankle injury. So I'm pretty pessimistic on his outlook this week, even if he's active. And so maybe if he is active, we can kind of look at, projected roster percentage will be more on Chark than it actually should be. And it might open up some nice value plays there on the Jaguars side of the ball.
Yeah, there's 3 wide receivers here with the Jaguars that I'm actually interested in. Shenault, he's going to be the most popular. He's averaging 12 DK points per game. A little bit lower is Keelan Cole, 4,900. He's had 5 targets in every single game. And then I'll throw it out there. If you want a dart throw this week in a tournament, Chris Conley's only 3,600 on DK. Detroit's allowing deep targets on 15+% of their opponents' attempts, which is second highest. And when Chark was out week 3, he saw 8 targets, 4 of them were deep. They didn't connect with Gardner Minshew. So if you want to just, mix this up in a different way, if you're stacking this game, Stafford, maybe Galladay, and then Robinson, and maybe pick a wide receiver if you think this game is going to hit the over. I don't mind that at all. Anything about these tight ends, Tyler Eifert's kind of hurt right now, so James O'Shaughnessy's had some snaps. TJ Hawkinson is the tight end 4. Like we said, there's no tight ends this week. He's the tight end 4 on DK. Interested at all?
Yeah, a little bit. I think you can even go double stack here if you want to build Stafford, Galladay, Hawkinson stacks. I think it's really in play because, like we talked about, this Jaguars defense is just bleeding points to opposing offenses. And actually, it was really intriguing. In Kenny Galladay's first game back off of the hamstring strain, TJ Hawkinson's usage and his routes run and those metrics all actually increase. So it's almost as if Kenny Galladay being back in the lineup opens up the middle of the field for Hawkinson to be productive. So I actually think he's a really intriguing play. The price is great on FanDuel at $5,700.
All right, so what's your take on the line? It's like I said, it's 54.5 right now. The Lions are 3.5-point road favorites.
Yeah, I talked about it a little bit with kind of fading Gardner Minshew when he doesn't have Chark in the lineup. So I'm going to take the under, and it's not because I don't think this is a great game for us to attack. I'm just not sure that Jacksonville can really hold up their end of the bargain here with this game total. Like I said, I feel more confident in the Lions in this matchup.
Yeah, I'll take the under as well, but not by much. I just think that these teams also sometimes just can't convert third downs, and the defenses are bad. So don't get me wrong. These defenses are really, really bad, but there's going to be some drives where they just don't convert. All right, next game. It is my Falcons. Jeez, man. 0-5. That's
that's something.
That's depressing. Some of my friends, Falcons fans, we were saying, all right, so we're competing with the Giants and the Jets to like be bad. Like that's the conversation that we're in right now. It's just like, let's be bad like these really, 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 really bad teams.
Just
Falcons
get that top pick,
play.
man.
That's what we need to do. I feel bad for Dan Quinn. He's a classy guy. He wrote a great article that I got to read, but it was time to move on. The Falcons play at the Vikings. Vikings are 1-4. This game has a 54.5 total. Vikings are 3.5 point home favorites, which they should be. And there's a lot to like on the Minnesota side. There's a lot of value because likely Dalvin Cook's out. And so Alexander Mattison steps in. He is priced up. So realize we're not getting a cheap play. They priced this knowing that Mattison would be the guy. So on DraftKings, he's 7,200. On FanDuel, he's 7,000. Is Alexander Mattison someone you want to put in your lineup?
He's going to be a great play this week. I mean, he's a guy who came out last week without Cook in the lineup, played 43 snaps. Mike Boone, the backup, played 5. Now, I'm not sure if that was just a result of, oh gosh, like Cook's out, Madison get in there, but maybe they game plan a little bit more to split. I'm not sure. I do think he's a great play, though. I wish he was cheaper. I wish he didn't get priced up as much as he did, because in cash formats, if he was cheaper, I mean, there's no way I wouldn't have him in my lineup. But I do think he's going to be pretty chalky. Do you have a projected ownership percentage on Alexander Mattison this week?
I saw him over 20%.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. So I think he's more of a cash game play for me than a GPP type of play, because we know the Falcons, right? I mean, sorry, Kyle, but they can give up points to any position. It really doesn't matter. Tight end, wide receiver, running back, quarterback, whatever. It doesn't matter. And so maybe you look at this game and you say, okay, if everyone is going to be on Alexander Mattison, maybe I'll just pivot in GPPs and go with Kirk Cousins stacks, with the pass catchers there, and a sneaky tight end that we're going to talk about here in just a minute.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins, 6,100 on DK, 7,100 on FanDuel. Falcons are bad, like we said. Their QBs, get this, opposing QBs have averaged 345 passing yards and 3 TDs a game against these. But Cousins hasn't been a high-volume guy. He hasn't thrown over 260 yards yet, but this could be the game, and I love the options in the passing game. I mean, Thielen is a cash game play at 7,300. Justin Jefferson on FanDuel is only 5,900. I love him for tournaments. I think he's going to bounce back. Last 2 weeks has been down from that 30-point game, but Justin Jefferson is someone that if you don't want to play Madison and you want a piece of this game, I love Justin Jefferson. And come on, dude, let's talk about our boy Big Irv. Big Irv.
Yes. I'm so excited about Big Irv. If people don't know who that is, that's Irv Smith Jr., the tight end for the Vikings. He is young. He was an Alabama tight end. Kind of took a little bit of a while to reach his I guess, breakout, so to speak, in the NFL. And we still haven't seen the ceiling, but man, if there was ever a game for him to get there, it is against the Falcons. They are bleeding points to the tight end, the most fantasy points to tight ends so far this season. And really what I'm excited about is the mini breakout we saw last week against Seattle. He ran the most routes of the season last week, had his best stat line, was involved in the game. And I'm really excited about that because people might think, okay, if Irv Smith is productive, then obviously Kyle Rudolph has to be coming off the field, right? Well, no, his role didn't change at all. And so what that tells me is that this offensive staff is saying, all right, Irv Smith needs to get involved in some way, whether we get him on in the slot or 2 tight end sets or whatever it is, let's get him on the field. So I'm really, really intrigued with Irv Smith here. I mean, $2,500 on DraftKings. If you want to punt tight end this week, that is a play, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I put out an article earlier this week about how to properly execute a punt play. And this is what you want. You want someone who's a basement level, stone cold minimum, that's running routes, that has opportunity, a team that runs 2 tight end sets against a team that gives up a ton of points. And here's the thing about punt plays is that when you have someone like Irv Smith in your lineup, it opens up the opportunity for you to jam in a couple more studs, but you're also not asking Irv Smith in cash to get you 20 points. You're asking him to get 5. You're asking him to get 10 points, and he can do that. And so I was building my lineups, and I noticed that if I got Irv Smith, then I could actually get up to Calvin Ridley on the other side.
I love it.
Which I think he's a great play. 7,800 on DK. He's getting the type of targets and the air yard share when Julio's out. Yes, he goosed 2 weeks ago, but this past week it was great. So yeah, I love if you're gonna do Cousins, maybe Thielen and Smith, and while everyone else goes to Madison, and then stack it with Ridley, you're gonna be a little different than everyone else. I like Ridley. Man, who else do you like on the Falcons side?
Oh, not much, to be honest with you. I mean, these other players are just so thin. Russell Gage, I don't even know how to say the guy's first name.
Olamide Zaccheaus.
Yeah, I mean, he was like the punt play at wide receiver last week, and it just didn't work out. It's a thin play, but it is a good matchup, obviously, with the Vikings. They've been getting beat through the air a ton, but Matt Ryan has just crumbled without Julio. I mean, in games where Julio has either left early or not played, he's been the quarterback 27, 25, and 21 in those 3 weeks so far. So I'm just nervous about the offense in general, outside of Calvin Ridley, who we know is going to dominate the target share. So outside of that, it's really just contrarian plays that you're hoping for in a GPP. I don't really want any of these pieces besides Ridley in cash, to be honest with you.
And if you're wondering why we never mentioned Todd Gurley that much in these Falcons games, is that he doesn't really offer you a ceiling because he's so touchdown dependent. And so you're basically having to say, can he get 2 touchdowns? He did this past week. And Minnesota has allowed the 8th most rushing yards. So in terms of floor, I'm seeing him establish that more and more, but not for tournaments. He's not really the player that I want, especially on the road as an underdog. For me, it's mostly Calvin Ridley, and if you want to get cute, maybe Hayden Hurst, but he's running routes, but it's just not getting me there where I want to use him each week. For your Vegas pick, are you going to actually pick my Falcons?
I think I am. And really, this isn't a strong take. I don't have a super strong conviction for the Falcons, but they're 0-5. They should have already won 2 or 3 games. The Vikings, to be honest, are not that good of a team. If this was a 3-point spread, I might take the Vikings, but since we get that extra half point, I'll take the Falcons. They're going to get the first win this week, Kyle, for you, or at least cover the spread, hopefully.
Cover the spread. Is that even a win for us? No.
It is now.
I'm gonna take the Vikings just so emotionally I can feel better if the Falcons win. But once again, we're not giving betting advice. We're just saying what we would do in terms of how we see the game script roll out in this one. Next one is an AFC North battle. Cleveland Browns 4-1 at the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are 4-0, which is cool to see. It's cool to see that these teams are super competitive. Baltimore's right there. I mean, AFC North might get 3 teams in the playoffs, which is pretty great. Pittsburgh is 3.5-point favorites. This game is a 51-point total. So what do you like in this game? Do you feel like Cleveland can hang with the Steelers? I just feel like Baker, when he gets under pressure, and we know that the Steelers can get pressure on the quarterback, he just crumbles. So what is your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a really tricky and I think intriguing spot to talk about, because the Steelers, I mean, I feel like there's this idea out there that the Steelers have just this like amazing secondary. They're getting beat a ton by wide receivers. Exhibit A, Travis Fulham last week for my Eagles went off and it had a fantastic game. But, you know, it wasn't just him. We've seen this week after week after week. They are really strong up front, but they lack the ability to shut down wide receivers in the secondary so far this year. And so that might say to you, okay, like I'm really excited about guys like Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr., and I will have a little bit of exposure to them. But like you, I share the sentiment that I'm a little bit nervous about Baker Mayfield in this matchup. He hasn't really had a huge ceiling yet this year anyway. They're still running the ball a ton and building around the running game. So yeah, I'm not super excited about the Browns in this one, but I am really excited about the Steelers side of the ball in this matchup.
Yeah, the Cleveland defense, they have some awesome pieces. Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward are the big names that everyone knows about, but they just can't get off the field. Like, they're allowing their opponents to play fast. Their opponents have the 8th highest pace in terms of seconds per play, but they're allowing the second most passing yards and the most wide receiver fantasy points. Hear that again. The most wide receiver fantasy points, and they're facing a Steelers team that is just plush. They're just flush with wide receivers that we want to play, including our boy Chase Claypool. He's priced up a little bit more, but on FanDuel, he's still only $5,500. He will be popular. I bet, I haven't seen the numbers, but I bet he'll be 15+% because people are going to want to play this guy, and they're going to play it against a team that when you look at them in the matchup, it's going to be green, and it's going to say 32nd likely. But what do we know about Deontay Johnson? Do we have any status update about his injury?
As of now, as of Wednesday night, we don't have a huge update. Limited in practice today on Wednesday, but I'm projecting that he actually will play and be effective. The beat reporters that I trust, that I follow, have looked good, like as far as his recovery. So again, monitor the practice reports, see what happens throughout the week. But I think he's a really, really intriguing play because, like you said, everyone is going to be on Claypool. Meanwhile, Deontay Johnson has left this kind of gross taste in everyone's mouth because of the fact that he's left 2 of his 4 games so far because of injury. But in the 2 games that he didn't leave early, the first 2 weeks of the season, he was getting peppered with targets. And even though he still left early in 2 of 4 games, he is still leading this team in targets. So to me, that just screams GPP type of play here in this matchup. Like you said, we want to attack the Cleveland secondary, and Deontay Johnson, I feel like, is going to be potentially a single-digit roster percentage type of player in GPPs.
Yes, I love all these receivers. Juju, Deontay, Chase Claypool, even James Washington. He still has the second most routes run on Pittsburgh, but I don't trust them for cash because I don't know which one it's going to be. Big Ben is a really safe cash play. He doesn't offer anything on the ground, but 2 to 3 touchdowns seem very foreseeable in this game. So I love Big Ben. He has a ceiling too. James Conner seems safe. Last 3 weeks, 18, 21, and 18 opportunities. I don't mind him at 7,100 in DraftKings, but do you have a certain lean on what you're going to do with these wide receivers?
It's tough. I'll probably have a little bit of exposure to all these guys. Like I talked about with Deontay Johnson, I do like him quite a bit. I'm going to play a decent amount of him. I'm probably going to fade Chase Claypool this week, and it's not because I don't think he can have a good game. Clearly, we've seen it. But in DFS, you just want to remind yourself that this is a larger sample size that you want to hone in on, not just a week-to-week type of situation. Otherwise, you would just play whoever had the most points the week before and assume that you're going to win, and obviously it doesn't work like that. So I will probably fade Chase Claypool and lean more towards Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster. People are so down on Juju, and I get it. The box scores haven't been great, but to me, that's a situation where we can attack in DFS and say, all right, in GPPs, he's a guy that people are not going to be on, but he's got a great matchup, and I'm sure you'll talk about this in the wide receiver cornerback matchup in the DFS Pass, so please check that out. But the guy he's going up against in the slot has given up an 80% completion percentage, 142 yards and a touchdown on 20 targets. I mean, he's going to come out and have such easy receptions this week. I think he's a really, really good GPP play.
Eric Ebron's also someone that I like this week. Cleveland's allowed the second most catches to tight ends this year, and he's getting the snaps. So Vance McDonald is not a thing. Poor guy. He was cool.
That one stiff arm, man.
That we'll always remember that. Thanks a lot. But Ebron at 4,100 on DK is another great play. The Steelers defense, you have to pay up for the Ravens this week on defense, or the top defense on DraftKings, but you can actually drop down about $900 and get the Steelers, which I think they have just the highest ceiling against Baker Mayfield. Let me ask one more name on here, Kareem Hunt. What do you do with him? He's going to get the work. 6,900 on DK. He's definitely in play in terms of the volume, but do you want to roster him in cash?
It's so tough on a slate like this because if we had other guys that are our list of names to pick from, CEH, guys like Zeke, then it would be like, oh yeah, let's just fade Kareem Hunt and take those safer plays. But he's getting so much work. I mean, he is a true 3-down workhorse. And in cash, that usually works for you. But man, this Steelers front, if you exclude that Miles Sanders run from last week, which went for 74 yards, and I was jumping up and down on the couch, just so you know. They are giving up 2.06 yards per carry on the season. That is insane as a defense for the Steelers. But Kareem Hunt is insanely talented. He's involved in the the passing game. He's involved close to the goal line, so he'll have those high leverage opportunities. I feel stuck with Kareem Hunt. I'll probably have a little bit of him this week, but I don't think I'm going to build around him like I did last week.
The image I have stuck in my mind is you, the way that Tom Cruise was jumping up and down on that Oprah show, like a crazy man. And I assume that was you. I was cheering at the same time because I have him in redraft, and I didn't expect a 74-yard touchdown against the Steelers. But yeah, I'm going to keep that image and just let it be that. You don't have to explain anything else to me, Betts.
No words.
And I'll just say Odell Beckham is a fine play on FanDuel. He's a much better value there at 6,700. We haven't seen a yardage ceiling. You put the stat in there. He hasn't cleared 90 yards since over a year ago. So like we haven't seen him go for one of those games he used to go for with the Giants where it's like 140 and 2 touchdowns. It's not quite there. He just has to be super efficient, and I don't love that against the Steelers, but if I had to pick one site, it would be FanDuel. What's your Vegas pick?
Yeah, dude, this is, again, we're not a betting show, so take this with a grain of salt, but this is one of my favorite plays on the week. Pittsburgh minus 3.5. I think this is going to be one where Cleveland maybe shows their true colors. I mean, they really haven't had a tough schedule so far this year. They've played pretty soft opponents. The Bengals, we're talking about guys like the Cowboys are obviously not a good team. Like, they haven't played anyone really good, and the only time they did was the Ravens, and they got absolutely smashed. So I'm not convinced the Browns are very good. The Steelers, I know, are a very good team, and I think they're going to come out and show that in this matchup.
Yep, give me Steelers minus 3.5. This next one, I'm calling it the battle for Bay supremacy. We're talking about Green Bay at Tampa Bay. So this is a chance for Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers to establish Bay dominance. Alpha male of the Bay. Who's it going to be? Which Hall of Famers is it going to be? This game opened up, I saw 51.5. It's now at 54 points, and the Packers, who are 4-0, are 2.5-point road favorites. So how do you want to attack this game? We have some big names in here. We have Devontae Adams coming back off an injury. Do you think you could actually lay down that cash? He's 8,000 on DraftKings. He's 9,000 on FanDuel. Are you going to play him coming off this injury?
I feel pretty confident about him as far as his health is concerned. That price, though, is just... for a guy that hasn't played in several weeks, you would think potentially we get a little discount from our friends over at DraftKings and FanDuel, but that is not the case this week. And so the only thing that really turns me off of Devontae Adams is the price. But this defense, if you want to attack the Tampa defense, it's not on the ground. They are so good on the ground. They're first in the league in terms of rushing yards allowed per game. You have the stat in here, 42 rushing yards per game is insane. It is absolutely insane. So you want to attack them through the air. So I do want to spend up in a couple of lineups, especially GPP type lineups with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams stacks. But in cash, I think I'll probably spend down at wide receiver to make sure that I get the best plays at running back, because like we talked about, the running back choices this week are just slim to none. So yeah, I think he's more of a GPP type of play this week.
I'm with you too. I was trying to look at lineups. If you put in Rodgers, who's priced up as well with Adams, that's 30% of your budget right there, gone between two players, yeah. and you haven't even touched running back yet. So that's not a great way to build a cash lineup. There is a ceiling for both of those players. Carlton Davis has played pretty well the last couple of weeks, so it's a tough matchup, and you brought it up. Aaron Jones is a tough matchup. On DraftKings, he's the RB1. If you take out CMC and Dalvin Cook in terms of salary, you have to pay up for all of those players. You got to pay up for your boy Robert Tonyan after a 3-touchdown game. He's the, get this, Robert Tonyan Harding is the tight end 2.
That might be my favorite nickname for the footballers this year is Robert Tonyan Harding.
I tried so hard with that one. I put it in the doc. I was like, highlighted it, and Andy went for it. So Robert Tonyan Harding is 6'2".
I'm cracking up. Our listeners need to know our show doc actually has a figure skate emoji next to his name on the doc because we're rolling with the nickname Robert Tanyan Harding. And I feel like I need to play him in at least 3 lineups this week with that nickname. So, yep, I'm in.
He's like, you can't say Marcos Valdez-Scantling. It's the full name. It's Robert Tanyan Harding.
Exactly.
Is his name, but he's the tight end too, so you got to pay up for him as well. On the Bucks side of the ball, what do you think about Ronald Jones? 106 yards last week. Didn't play a lot of third downs a couple weeks ago, but Green Bay is tied for the most fantasy points allowed to running backs per game. So through 4 games, they're giving up on the ground, and he's only 5,800 on FanDuel. And if you guys don't know why we recommend certain sites to play certain people, usually FanDuel prices are a lot higher. They're at least $600 to $1,000 higher, so you can kind of tell where there's value. Whenever a player is priced lower on FanDuel, that's a value. I mean, that's a big deal. And so Ronald Jones, 6,000 on DK, only 5,800 on FanDuel, which fits his skill set a little bit more. Are you interested in Rojo?
Yeah, our good friends over at FanDuel are imploring us to play Ronald Jones on their site. I mean, $5,800 is insanely cheap. So I will play him there. And it's only because on FanDuel, like we've talked about in the past, it's not full PPR like DraftKings. And so really, when you're looking at one-dimensional running backs that don't catch the football a ton, it doesn't hurt you that much, because if he gets 80 to 100 yards on the ground and finds the end zone, he's going to pay off his salary, and that's a great play, and he can do that there. I am worried about Ronald Jones on DraftKings. His price isn't egregious at $6,000, but you look at what he did last week. I mean, he literally played 0 snaps on third down. It was Keyshawn Vaughn on every single third down snap, and to me, that just screams no ceiling on DraftKings. I mean, you need him to basically come out and go for like 130 on the ground and a touchdown or 2 if you're playing him in GPPs. So for me, he's a full fade on DraftKings. I will play him on FanDuel, especially because the matchup, like you said, on the ground game with Green Bay is just so good. They're getting destroyed on the ground.
Let's talk about those Bucks pass catchers. Chris Godwin potentially coming back from his hamstring injury. Mike Evans is scoring touchdowns, but not really doing a ton else. I love that he put his TD rate in here right now. 17.1%. That's not real, folks. That's like not at all possible. 10% is crazy. 17% is just out of this world.
Yeah, and to me, that just screams red flag. Like, one of these weeks, Mike Evans is going to let you down. If you've played him through the first 5 weeks of the season, you're happy because he's scoring touchdowns every single week. But yeah, I mean, he leads the NFL in receiving touchdowns. He is 23rd in targets. Eventually, those numbers are gonna kind of balance out, and you're gonna come up with a pretty bad stat line for Mike Evans one of these weeks. So again, I'm not really super excited about him. I'll have him in a couple of game stacks with the Packers coming back with Mike Evans, but again, I'm not building around him by any means this week.
Yeah, this is an interesting game because this will be the one that people talk about just because of the big names. But there's a lot of names that, I don't know, could be traps. And so we want to bring them up. So as you're sifting through the names, you say, okay, Devontae Adams, big name. I want to play him, but I should probably only play him in GPPs. Ronald Jones, I probably should only play him on FanDuel. Tom Brady, he's fine. I think you're fine if you're there, but I'm not super excited. It's a good Packers team. So for me, in terms of the Vegas total, I actually like the under. I feel like 54 is a little high. People betted it up from 51.5, but 54 points feels a little high, especially against two defenses that are, middle of the road. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the under is actually a really good play. And, I think it's okay too, just real quick before I give my take, which I know everyone comes to this podcast for my betting takes.
Your hot takes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Making people millions. This is a game where, it's okay in DFS to sometimes listen to this show and say, this is a full fade based off what these guys are saying and based off what my research is telling me. And the more we talk, Kyle, I feel like I might just be a full fade on this game. So I'm putting that out there for the people. But I am going to go with Green Bay covering the spread here. I think they win this game.
It is a great feeling when you fade a game and it doesn't, help a lot of other people in DFS because you look at that game and you're like, oh, no one's moving up the leaderboards at all. It's dangerous to do a full fade, but sometimes you really need to do it to hone in on just a couple other games. And this next one, I am excited about. You are probably excited about because you saw those Tennessee Titans on Tuesday night destroy the Bills. And really, Ryan Tannehill is on a crazy, crazy streak. They're just really efficient. This team is third in plays per game. They have the highest rush success rate. They have the third best early down success rate. They're just efficient across the board. And, you know, you look at AJ Brown, like he didn't put up crazy yardage totals this past week, but just like you knew when they were going to throw him the ball, good things were going to happen. But this game has a 53.5 point total. The Titans are 3-point favorites over the Texans, which I didn't even mention the Texans, I think. But, whoops.
This is the Titans game.
This is the Titans game. And Texans, you know, they got to win this past week. They didn't need B.O.B. at all. And Deshaun Watson looked a lot better. But yeah, let's talk about the Titans side first before we figure out how we're going to maybe stack this game. Tannehill is 5,900 on DraftKings. That is egregious for a player that just scored, 3 touchdowns, and it's been awesome this year. So is Tannehill in consideration for cash?
Oh, for sure. Especially with that price. He's a guy that I will probably look at first. I talked about Matthew Stafford quite a bit. I love him as well this week. But to me, when you look at the pricing and what these guys can do, yeah, to me, Ryan Tannehill is a great play here, especially in cash.
And I'm going to serve this up to you because this is probably one of the things that DraftKings made the biggest mistake on this past week. And the reason they did it is because the game was played Tuesday night. DraftKings sets the salaries on Monday. And so they had no idea if AJ Brown was going to play, much less go off and help me win a week in redraft. AJ Brown is one of my favorite players in the league for helping my team, the Geriatric Diapers, get a win in our redraft league. So really proud of that squad. I'm sure you guys are all here to hear about my redraft team. But
Absolutely.
AJ Brown,
that's why I'm here.
AJ Brown, 5,600 on DK. I mean, you have to play him in cash.
Yeah, to me, I will not build a cash lineup without AJ Brown. We were messaging each other today in Slack about the slate and kind of like building some lineups around it. And I looked at your roster and you showed me the DK price on AJ Brown, and I was like, that has to be a mistake. Like, how is that real? I mean, $5,600. He is I think he is single-handedly the best value on the entire slate. So yes, I mean, you look at what he did against Houston last year, 21 targets, 12 receptions, 238 yards, 2 touchdowns in those 2 games against Houston. So he's beaten them before. And you look at Ryan Tannehill, right? Like when you watch the game on Tuesday night, AJ Brown was the first and second read on every single passing play. So yeah, he's going to have volume. He's extremely explosive with the ball in his hands. I absolutely love him this week. I want him in almost every lineup.
And everyone's going to identify AJ Brown as the value this week. So if you read articles or you see people on Twitter talk about AJ Brown, ignore how popular he's going to be for cash. It doesn't really matter to me roster percentages in cash very much at all. Like, pretty much ignore them. Play the team that you think is going to do the best. I usually play 50-50s, and so I'm trying to basically say if there's 100 plus people in the contest that I'm doing, I got to be better than 50 of them. I can do that. And so ignore the percentage. He's going to be super popular. Jonnu Smith will probably be super popular. He's the tight end 1 on the season in terms of half-point leagues, which is crazy considering he's only played 4 games. He's just awesome. He's elite after the catch. He's someone that we talked about before the season on Footballers. We talked about who could be this year's Mark Andrews, and he was the number 1 candidate that I brought up in that article. Jonnu Smith is just awesome on FanDuel. I love him at 5,800. He's a cash game play. If you don't want to play AJ Brown, then maybe you do Jonnu Smith. Here's my question. I'm having this issue. Can you have multiple Titans? Let's say you have Tannehill, you have AJ Brown in your cash lineup. Can you also have Jonnu Smith too? Is that like asking too much?
I think in normal circumstances where we would have other guys that we want to play, I probably would say, yes, it's too much. But man, the matchup with Houston is just a dream scenario. And like you talked about, I mean, there's just certain teams sometimes that you have to throw these like efficiency metrics out the window or regression out the window. Like all offseason, we talked about how the Titans couldn't do what they did last year. And now they're coming out where literally they weren't even in their own building for 12 days. And they came out and smashed against the Bills with just insane efficiency. What Arthur Smith is doing as the OC is fantastic for Ryan Tannehill in the passing game. So I think you can, man. I mean, I think Ryan Tannehill has enough ceiling and stability at the quarterback position to get AJ Brown there and to get Jonnu Smith there. So yeah, I think it's viable this week.
we haven't even mentioned Derrick Henry yet, and we're talking about the Titans. And the last time he played the Texans, no big deal. 211 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. I will play him in cash, especially on DraftKings. You know, a lot of times DraftKings is a place where Derrick Henry gets poo-pooed on because he doesn't catch passes, but 7,300 is a value. On FanDuel, he's all the way up at 9,000, so you're paying a little bit more there. That's his skill set. But yeah, I have him in my cash game lineup right now for DraftKings. Right now my lineup has Tannehill, Henry, and AJ Brown. I might mix it up and just go with 2 just to play it safe. But man, I love all 4 of those guys. You should be building around them in tournaments, mix and matching, which means on the other side of the ball, you need to figure out what's the best way that the Texans are going to score on the Titans. So, David Johnson, are you going there?
To me, he is a contrarian GPP play, and that's the only situation. David Johnson outside of week 1 has looked just pretty meh. And I saw a report today that potentially they want to get Duke Johnson more involved in the passing game this week. So yeah, David Johnson's tough. He's seeing volume. He's okay in like redraft formats, but in DFS where we want ceiling, he just isn't getting there. So I think I'm a full fade here on DJ in week 6.
What about Brandon Cooks? He blew up this past week, and I actually had him in I played like maybe 5 GPP lineups, and I had him in 4 of them. So I was feeling pretty good getting Brandon Cooks in there because no one wanted to play him. Would you, in a tournament, say Cooks or Fuller? Or both?
Yeah, we're talking about our favorite plays, our favorite stacks, game stacks on this slate. And as you guys have heard me say a couple times, and Kyle too, like there's certain plays that even though we're talking about them on this show, we don't actually love that much, but I love this matchup. And so if you are putting your flag in the ground, you're planting your flag on this game, and you're saying, all right, Titans are going to smash. I'm going to bring it back with a Texan. I would almost say do it with 2 of them because the target share is pretty condensed between Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks. And we saw Deshaun Watson come out and have a good game last week. I think he can kind of get going here in the middle half or the middle third of the year, I guess I should say, against the Titans. So yes, I think you can play both Fuller and Cooks in a lineup where you're building around Tannehill, AJ Brown, Jonnu Smith, etc.
Fuller is a major value on FanDuel. He's actually cheaper on FanDuel. So like I mentioned earlier, when someone's cheaper on FanDuel, that's saying you need to play him. So I like him a lot on FanDuel at 6,700. You can stack him with Deshaun Watson. He's a little bit more expensive this week because those other quarterbacks are off, but Watson's, he's up for play. If you want to do Watson instead of Tannehill, then, maybe that's a way to go at this game. But yeah, I like this game. The Titans, I didn't know that they would become a team that we're saying, I want all the pieces for this team. Usually you'd pick 1, maybe 2, but yeah, the Titans, man, I'm going to go Titans -3.
I'm with you, man. Titans -3.
All right, let's duke it out.
DFS Battle Royale.
We're still tied up after this past week, and we're going to use DraftKings this week. And in Battle Royale, what we do, remember, is we pick a couple of categories, and this is a chance for you, while you're listening, wherever you're doing this, if you're listening, you're on a run. You're on like a 5K run, or you are sitting on the toilet listening to us. I don't judge you. I don't even know what you look like right now, but I'm glad you're here. And we're going to give you a chance as we go through these categories to do the same thing, to hear what we're talking about and then just say, hey, who would be a quarterback this week in the top 5 that you think will pay off? So the category we're doing is top 5 quarterback in terms of points per dollar. Who do you like best this week on DraftKings?
Yeah, at the quarterback position, I'm going to go with Big Ben. We talked about the game and the environment where we want to build around Steelers. In the AFC, they are dead last in terms of touchdown passes allowed to opposing offenses. That is Cleveland. So yes, Big Ben's going to come out and have a great week. Coming off of a good week last week, I think he keeps it going here. And at $6,700 on DK, I think he's actually a really, really good play this week.
I'm going to go with Lamar Jackson. his price has just continually dropped. It was 8,200 in week 2, then 8,100 in week 3 and 4, 7,900 last week. He's only at 7,700 now, and that's starting to creep into the area where you go, okay, I know he hasn't paid off. I know that things haven't gone big yet, but Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews are players that I think could win you a week this week. And we mentioned earlier, but it's Mark Andrews at the top in terms of what you need to pay. I will pay up for him because there's so many other plays that aren't that great. So in cash right now, I have Mark Andrews as my tight end because he just feels so safe. And I think he's just set up really well. So Lamar Jackson, give me a running back under 6.5K on DraftKings.
All right. I'm going with David Montgomery. And as you can tell, I'm not
You sound nervous.
I'm not that excited about it, but he's $5,800 and it's a great, great value. He's going up against Carolina, and we've seen what they have been this year against the ground game against opposing offenses. And to be honest, it has not been good. It has been quite bad, actually. So David Montgomery is the play. The only reason I say that with a little hesitation is just because we've seen him have games where he's kind of faded off and really not come out and smashed where he should have. But going up against you this week, David Montgomery is the play, and I think he's going to have a great week.
I think it's a great pick. If you scroll on DraftKings, it says 32nd next to him. I mean, Carolina's giving it up on the ground. I think that's a great play. I'm going to go up a little further. I think this is the week for Jonathan Taylor. I think this is the week where he actually pays off 6,400. I feel like he's not quite there yet for me in cash. Like I just need to see a little bit more. Jordan Wilkins is getting way too many attempts. That guy needs to go away. But Jonathan Taylor Thomas at 6,400, you can play. Jonathan Taylor Thomas is a 90s heartthrob. Don't play him. Play Jonathan Taylor. All right.
Pro reference.
I know. Wide receiver under 4,000. So this is someone who's like basically a punt play. Who are you looking at?
Yeah, I'm going to punt with Damiere Byrd. And if you don't even know who that is, he is a wide receiver for the New England Patriots, who we haven't even seen on a football field in a couple of weeks because of all this COVID nonsense. But they're coming back. And last time we saw the Patriots on the field, Damiere Byrd saw 10 targets. And no one's really talking about Damiere Byrd. I think he's a really sneaky GPP punt type of play. I mean, honestly, he's going to be like 3% rostered or 4% rostered in tournaments. So I like him a lot because Cam Newton was looking his way quite a bit. And Denver has been kind of susceptible to the passing attack so far this year. So Damiere Byrd, I will take him here at $3,500 in DraftKings.
That game, I've kind of overlooked it this past week because, Cam's been on COVID list. We haven't really seen them play. We don't know what to do. But yeah, Broncos are totally beatable, and I love that price. I will go with someone who is the stone cold minimum, and I was talking about him today on Twitter. He's the player that's run the most routes the last 2 weeks in the NFL. I'm talking about Jeff Smith.
Oh, of course. Jeff Smith.
Now, Jeff Smith sounds like the most bland person that you graduated with in high school that you haven't thought about until right now. But Jeff Smith,
I think every listener knows a Jeff Smith. At
Good
least
old-
one in their life.
My dad's name is Jeff, not a Smith. But anyway, Jeff Smith, New York Jets wide receiver. He's actually gotten 20 targets the last 2 weeks, which is a lot of volume. And there's no way that you could ever find that at $3,000. So he is a punt play this week. And if you need more information or just what do I mean by punt play, on the website, I wrote up a free article, how to execute the punt play and what to think about and maybe some strategy around it. So go ahead and read that. But Jeff Smith is somebody that I will consider in cash if I want to punt that one wide receiver spot. All right, give me a cash tight end not named Mark Andrews this week.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Eric Ebron. We talked about it a little bit with the Pittsburgh game, and I'm stacking him with Big Ben here because if you guys watched the Eagles game last week when they played Pittsburgh, Eric Ebron was involved, and he's been involved quite a bit, like you talked about, playing over 75% of the snaps the past 3 weeks, and he had a couple of receptions where he should have had them, dropped them, had a fumble. Like, there's more opportunity for Eric Ebron than I think people realize, and he's just $4,100 on DraftKings, so I think he's a really nice value this week if you're trying to spend up at the other positions.
I'll go with our boy Jonnu Andre Smith. I had to look up his middle name. I just, we needed to mention that.
Obviously.
I used to keep, this is weird, I used to keep a spreadsheet of every single relevant fantasy player's middle name. And
that is so weird.
I think middle names are hilarious because most people don't think about it. But yeah, some of my favorites are Adriel Jeremiah Green. Rest in peace, AJ Green. You know,
oh man,
AJ Green is $3,900 on DK this week.
What? I didn't even see that. Is he really?
Yeah, he's left for dead. Man.
Oh, poor guy.
I love me some. But anyway, back to Jonnu, Andre Smith. He's 5,200. I will be playing him in cash. But like I said, you need to be a little careful. Don't play 4 Titans in your cash lineup. Maybe pick 2. If you want to do Tannehill and Jonnu, I think that's safe and go elsewhere at running back and wide receiver. Give me a cheap DST that's not named the Miami Dolphins. Just so you know, the Miami Dolphins are going to be the chalk play at defense. They're 2,900 on DK. I recommend playing them in your cash lineup. It's totally fine. Don't worry about the roster percentage, but give me a cheap defense that's not named the Dolphins, which is weird to say. The Dolphins are the chalk defense.
2020, man. Here we are. I'm going to roll with the Titans this week. They are $2,800 on DraftKings. And it's not because I think they're a phenomenal defense. They're pretty good, but they're not like one that we're super excited to play every week like we are with the Steelers or the Ravens. But the reason I'm really excited about them is because in Tennessee Titans games, the combined plays per game between the two teams is averaging to be the 8th most plays per game. So we're looking at a defense that's going to have more volume. And as favorites, we're projecting Deshaun Watson to have to drop back more and throw the ball more in this game. And as we've seen before, he is prone to sacks. He is prone to turnovers. So I'm projecting the Titans to have more opportunity to take the ball away from the Texans in this matchup.
I'll take the Vikings. They're way down there, 2,300. They play the Falcons at home. There's just opportunity there. It's more of a punt play, but if you really want to drop all the way down, that is a place I'm not afraid to go to. Let's get into a couple of mailbag questions.
Mailbag.
All right. Got a couple of questions here. And this first one's from, must be one of your besties. It's at Philly Special 8. Is this your boy?
Oh, for sure. Anyone that has an Eagles logo as their Twitter Abby is definitely a phenomenal human being. So welcome to the show, Philly_special.
So are Eagles fans nice people?
Some of us are.
I feel like they get the rap of just being jerks.
Yeah. I mean, hey, if you've ever been an away team at the Link at an away game there for the Philly, the Eagles, it can be scary sometimes. So I understand why the stigma exists.
So Philly Special 8 asks, what is your favorite contrarian stack? And I'll just give some parameters around this. This needs to be somebody that we either didn't talk about very much or is in a game that, hey, it's not one of the top totals, but it could go a little different. So is there any stack that you are interested this week that you're like, all right, if you need a shot in a tournament, go for it?
Why are we not talking about Ryan Fitzpatrick and Devontae Parker stacks literally every single week? We should be. I mean, no one's talking about Ryan Fitzpatrick. Here's quarterback finishes over the past 4 weeks. 11, 6, 10, and 3. And now he gets the Jets. And we just saw Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins as the quarterback 1, wide receiver 1 come out and smash last week. I think that is a phenomenal GPP stack that no one's talking about this week.
For sure. I in all my prep, I've thought about Ryan Fitzpatrick because he's the man right now. He's awesome, but I haven't really looked at that game a ton in terms of DFS. I'll throw out somebody that vomited on the field basically last week. Daniel Jones, Darius Slayton. Last week was supposed to be the week for Daniel Jones against the Cowboys. Listen to these fantasy finishes, these points-wise on DK the last 4 weeks. You ready for this? 9.7. 10.1, 11.1, and 9.2. That is something you want out of your quarterback bets. That is so bad. He has 2 passing touchdowns on the season. He's averaging 11.9 fantasy points. So it's way out there, but nobody's going to want to play him after last week. So if you wanted to go with Daniel Jones, Darius Slayton, and then Terry McLaurin on the other side, let's just get weird. Why not? Next question is at Mista Sean. Ooh, I like that name, Mista. He said, should we be spending up at the running back position this week, or are there low-cost options at running back that allow us to spend up at wide receiver? So let's just talk about those top options at running back, and do you want to spend up there? So for instance, Alexander Mattison, 7,200. Derrick Henry is way up there at 7,300. James Conner is somebody that you could do 7,100. Aaron Jones. Of those guys, who would you say are your favorites?
Yeah, I think for me, the top two plays, and to no surprise, are the most expensive on this slate. I mean, Derrick Henry's in a great spot against Houston. Alexander Mattison is in a phenomenal spot against Atlanta, and they're the two of the three highest priced guys. So to me, they are the priority in cash lineups. I will say, however, there are some intriguing options if you scroll down a little bit lower. Like we talked about, David Montgomery against Carolina is $5,800. Myles Gaskin's seeing a ton of work. He's just $5,400 on DraftKings. So I think those guys are intriguing, but I feel way, way safer about a cash lineup that's built around Derrick Henry and Alexander Mattison.
Yeah, James Robinson will be the only other name that I throw out there at 6,800. If you want to drop down a little further, Mike Davis is in a revenge game spot at 7,000 against the Bears. And there's nothing better than throwing your money out there in DFS because of a revenge game narrative. So I'll just say for wide receivers, I like to spend up for wide receivers in GPPs. I don't love doing it in cash. There's just a lot better options that are cheaper. So Ridley and Thielen stand out to me as people that I want to play. And then I'll also just throw out Will Fuller is tempting if you want to game stack that game. And then going a little bit lower, you mentioned Devontae Parker and Kenny G as two guys that are a little bit. But for me, in cash, spend up on your running backs. You can find the value at wide receiver. All right, last one from Not That Jared. He says, thinking about the likely game environment versus player level matchup, which one do you weigh more, or does it really depend? So when we're analyzing stuff, is it the game environment, as in like the pace, the total, or is it the actual matchup that matters more to us? Or is this a trick question?
I think it's a little bit of a trick question because the answer depends on if you're playing cash or GPPs. If you are playing cash lineups, to me, the game environment doesn't matter a ton because you almost treat it like you would if you're going against someone in your home league or in a redraft league where you just want to try to beat half the field or play against someone and beat that person. So it doesn't really matter what the ceiling is or the floor. Like, you're just playing the best plays you can think of on the slate. So it doesn't really matter about the game environment as much. But if you're trying to reach ceiling in GPPs, that's when what we're talking about really, really matters because you want to target games that have high over-unders. You want to target games that have a lot of shootout potential because that's the way for you to quickly build fantasy points in your lineup against other players who are playing against you who aren't playing that game stack. So for me, it really depends on the type of format. If it's cash, it doesn't matter as much. But if you're playing GPP, that game environment, I think to me is really, really important.
100%. I totally agree with you. I remember texting with you this past week, and usually when it gets to Saturday, you and I kind of like text like, hey man, where's your lineup at? And is there any games that you've rethought? And this past week, I remember texting you and saying, man, I feel like that Pittsburgh-Philadelphia game is a game that like no one's talking about, and I feel like I could be interested in a GPP. And so, I was a little bit on Chase Claypool as a play. I did not see Miles Sanders as someone that I really wanted to play because you just look at Pittsburgh and you go like, okay, well, the matchup says don't play Miles Sanders. But the game environment was a back and forth. I mean, that was a close game that you guys lost to your in-state rivals.
Thank you for the reminder.
This is my 0-5-ness talking. My son, my son tonight, as I was tucking him in bed, he put on his kind of football pajamas and he said, "Daddy, did the Falcons lose again?" Like he didn't know what happened. He's only 4, but he was trying to.
Is he talking trash?
He was kind of just asking, like, so do we ever win? It was
nope.
But yeah,
no, son, we don't.
But with game environment, it really does matter where you're attacking a game and you're saying, ooh, what if things go back and forth? And that's how Fulham, that's how Claypool, that's how Sanders were all in the same game. because it kind of had that back and forth. The pace was up, and that's what you're hoping for, and that's what you really want out of a GPP lineup. So that's a really great question, because at the end of the day, you have to carry different mindsets in cash than you do with GPP. So Bets, how have you felt, just before we end, about our DK tournament? We've been playing it each week. 75-man, $5 entry, the top 5 payout. This past week, I showed my wife a screenshot. And at one point, I was in second place, feeling really good. I think I ended at like 20 something. But there was a minute where I was like, I'm going to show our listeners that I know my stuff. So how have you felt in this tournament so far?
It's been so tricky, because you know what happens? We come on the show, we talk about the guys that we love, and then people presumably play those players. And so I feel like I can't play them. And so I've been kind of stuck between, what I should do and what's contrarian. I haven't played very well in those lineups. However, I was tracking your score, because I was like, man, if Kyle comes out and wins this, I'm not going to be able to hear the end of it on the podcast. So I was kind of rooting against you, if I'm being honest. But I do think it's a super fun way to interact with our listeners. And, each week we filled it. People are really excited to play. So yes, check it out. 75-man tournament. $5 entry, the top 5 get paid out, and it's been a great way to kind of see what our listeners are learning and watch them win money. It's totally fun, so check it out.
Yeah, just go on DraftKings, you can check it out. Play some Le'Veon Bell in there, some Christian McCaffrey if you need to. Yeah, that'll be perfect.
They're gonna be great this week.
Have a great week.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers DFS Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at www.thefantasyfootballers.com.